All right, everyone. My name is Lieutenant McCauley. Welcome to the MECP live Zoom brief. I will start by saying this brief is not on behalf of any of the Corps. This brief is put on by Navy Nurse Corps officers that honestly just want to give back to sailors who are applying or aspiring to become Navy Nurse Corps officers through the MECP program. So with that being said, anything that is passed today is our own expressions. And again, this is not on behalf of the Corps itself. With that being said, we're going to go ahead. I'm going to do some introductions. We're going to go around, introduce the presenters, and then we'll get into our opening remarks. So first and foremost, we have Lieutenant Kern, if you don't mind introducing yourself.
Good afternoon, team. I'm Lieutenant Kern George. Been in the Navy almost 17 years. I'm the division officer on the Mother Baby Unit in Naval Medical Center, Portsmouth.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much for being here. Next, we have Lieutenant Little.
Hello, how you doing? I'm Lieutenant Toya Little. Been in the Navy 22 and a half years. I currently work in the PACU. I used to actually work with Lieutenant George as well on the Mother Baby Unit. It was a real great experience. Happy to be here.
Awesome, awesome. And also we have HM1 Chung.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, guys. I'm HM1 Chung. I've been in the Navy 8 years. I was just recently selected for AY 26 MECP selectee, and I'm happy to be here to share my experience with y'all. Thank you.
Awesome, awesome. And then we also have H21 Gutierrez.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm H21 Gutierrez. I've been in the Navy for 7 years now. I'm currently stationed at SWORMEC in San Diego, and I recently was selected for AY 26 as well.
Awesome, awesome. And then again, I want to say I do have Lieutenant Hall on board if you're there.
Hey everybody, this is Lieutenant Hall. I'm the current ship's nurse for the USS Truman. So that's where I'm at currently.
Awesome, awesome. So as you all can see, we have a diverse mixture of Nurse Corps officers here today, both current Nurse Corps officers and future Nurse Corps officers. And even with the future Nurse Corps officers, we have some within the medical community and some that are non-medical as well. So I love it.
Dennis,
Okay, I think yeah, hot mic. Okay, awesome. So yeah, what I love about this is everybody who's online here to learn or take notes and so forth and so on. You're gonna get very diverse experiences, and I think that that is great. Let me also go ahead and throw another disclaimer out real quick. Everything that is discussed today, just remember it is your package. No matter what, it is your commissioning package. There is always more than one way to skin a cat, meaning there's always more than one way to get the job done and get selected. So you will hear, again, some diversity of experiences here today, but just understand at the end of the day is your package. So take all these good gems you're going to get, and we're all rooting for you. So with that being said, let's get started. Oh, by the way, I'm Lieutenant McCauley. I am not a Navy Nurse Corps officer. I am a Medical Service Corps officer, and I love it. But I am moderating this because at the end of the day, even though I'm not a nurse corps officer, I cheer for my nurses. Nursing is very critical to our healthcare mission, and I truly support and love our nurses. So I'm here to help give back through moderating this. I am currently the medical admin officer on the USS Bougainville, and I will be heading to U.S. Fleet Forces Command next. All right, enough about me. So let's move forward. All right, so here's our agenda for today. We're going to have an overview of instructions and NAVADMINs, as well as there's program authorizations. And then we're going to move into package contents. In regards to package contents, our awesome nurse corps officers, our presenters are going to discuss the personal statement, CO's endorsement, letter of recommendations, interview appraisals, and evals. And then we're going to dive into what makes a competitive package. So talking about academic prereqs and transcripts, program expectations and timelines, lessons learned from them, and common pitfalls and best practices. And then, most importantly, at the end, we will have a question and answer session where you can ask these presenters directly anything that's on your mind. So, with that being said, let's move forward. All right. So, I always tell sailors, um, if you are wanting to become a Navy officer, right? I'm starting with that even before I say nurse. If you want to become a naval officer, you have got to read your instructions. You have got to read your NAVADMIN. You have got to understand policies. Okay. Everything is governed in black and white. Black and white gives you your left and right lateral limits. So before you come to any of these junior officers and especially senior officers, the first thing you need to make sure you have done is read OpNav instruction 1420.1 Bravo, specifically chapters 1, 2, and 5. 1 and 2 kind of go over, the general prerequisites to become a naval officer, right? Like age, U.S. citizenship, things like that. And then chapter 5 specifically dives into Medical Enlisted Commissioning Program, MECP. So, got to do that. And then NAVADMIN 031/26 is your most recent updated NAVADMIN. So the NAVADMIN builds off of the instruction. The instruction, if I remember correctly, that was done back in like what 2009 or something like that. It is old. It has never been updated. But the NAVADMIN is what is updated every single year. So there is some senior nurse sitting up high somewhere in BUMED, and that nurse is looking at the community of Navy nurses and saying, hey, we either need more nurses overall or we need less nurses overall. And then they're looking in specialties and saying we need more ICU or more ER or whatever the case might be. And so based on that, they are going to put out in the NAVADMIN specific things, and they're going to drive, the future of what the Navy Nurse Corps looks like. So I say that because again, every year that NAVADMIN could change. That's why you need to look at it. This is just some screenshots of what the OpNav instruction looks like. So on the left, again, it talks about basic eligibility requirements. On the right, that's what your table of contents look like. Again, 1 is the introduction, 2 talks about the application, and then number 5 talks about MECP in particular. Now, one thing that I did not put on this slide, but definitely going to put it out, and it's in the NAVADMIN, which I'll just go ahead and go to the next slide, is the MECP does have a page. If you just go type in, like on Google, if you type in MECP Navy, it'll bring you to the what is that called? The Navy Medicine web page for MECP. That's what it is. And it has the application on there. It has a fact sheet on there. It has interview appraisal on there. Like all that information is on that Navy Medicine website for MECP. But this is your NAVADMIN for this year. So I'm not going to read this for you. That's your job. But if I was reading this NAVADMIN, I can tell you one thing that stands out to me is number 2. So, boom. I'm not going to say anything else about it. That's your job. Read this NAVADMIN, pick out what you need to know. Make sure you have a mentor or mentors so they can go over this with you as well. And then also make sure that you are linked in with your command career counselor, because depending on where you are located, the command career counselor may or may not be familiar with MECP too much. So you're going to have to bring this information to them, especially like if you're stationed on a ship. Career counselor on a ship may know more about State 21 or LDO or CWO packages than they do MECP packages. So just make sure that you are linked in with your career counselor, your mentors, and you know what's on this NAVADMIN. Boom. And just like that, I'm getting out the way. I am now going to turn over to Lieutenant Kern George.
All right, guys, thanks again for having me here and having me share my knowledge with you guys. So we're gonna go over personal statements. There's some good points on the side of the screen. Start with why find your purpose, your conviction. So my personal experience and what I learned from the assistant chief of nursing. He was my captain before when I sorted my package. He sat numerous boards. What he told me, say, don't look into anything in terms of AI. Right now, AI is your worst friend. You want to be authentic. Tell them your story, okay? You want when that nurse or whoever sees that board read your statement, they want to get chills. They want to like see you, envision you. Pretty much, you want to paint that picture of your character, why you want to be a nurse, okay? So don't go on AI and put some information and the AI give you all this polish blurb. It sounds nice, but they could read through the lines that you put no effort in there and it's BS. So give a story. My personal story was that when I joined the Navy, I didn't know what I wanted to be. I was the corpsman. And then when I came in the ranks of nurses and how I see what they do, it inspired me and it resonated with my soul. And it made me want to be among the ranks of those officers, you know? And I mentioned some of my accolades I've gotten. And that I had one of my uncles that had condition. I wasn't born in America. I was born in Dominica. So I had an uncle that suffered from a heart condition, which like we would look like twins. And I love this guy to death. He died over 25 years ago. But the nurses in if you don't know, in foreign countries are like doctors. And like I would class my country as a third world country, a third world island, because you have like one doctor for like thousands of people, and that doctor will only be there couple hours in the day. So the nurses who will come to your house, that's what you like see as a doctor, as the doctors. So the nurses are so impactful. So I brought that into my story, you know, and I write it. I send it out to numerous people. It came back to me. We made changes back and forth. But the big thing about it, I want to say, be passionate about it. Tell your story. Don't just go out there and get something from AI and put it out there. Be authentic. That's all I want to say. Be honest. If anybody else wanna chime in on the personal statement, but that was my biggest lesson from that and what I took from that, and it
I
got me
will.
the first time.
I will. Just to, first of all, also let me apologize that I'm not, you're not looking at me live, but I did stop spring cleaning to do this, so I look a little bit disheveled. But just to piggyback off what Lieutenant George said, definitely you want to dig deep into your why and let them pretty much feel why you want to be a nurse, a Navy nurse at that. And also, like it says on there, is to answer your questions with clarity, get your mentors to read over your statements and everything, and align your statements with strategic initiatives, because it's not all about I want to be a nurse, I want to be a nurse. It's also about what you can bring to the Navy Nurse Corps. So think about how that also aligns with the jobs that you had, with your real job or with your collaterals. Look at how that can tie into your personal statement, because that's also going to make a big difference. And like he said, be honest and be authentic and be transparent. Everything that's there is what you need to do. And um, I think that's pretty much it. That's what I wanted to say.
Hey, I'm gonna jump in here as the moderator, and I'm gonna say, uh, you brought up a great point, George, with the AI. AI is something that everybody tends to lean heavily on nowadays. Um, I will say, and I want to say, I 100% agree. Like, do not do not let AI build your personal statement, right? This honestly, and I can only speak for me, but I'm sure other presenters would agree. This honestly is probably the hardest part of your package is writing your personal statement because many of you slash us aren't willing to just open up to people about things that we have seen or been through in life, and just really willing to share it with people. But you got to be able to do that. You got to be able to open up, like how George just told us something very personal about him. I didn't even know that, and I can tell you that I know that if he ever has a bad day in the Navy, he's going to think about that as why his internal motivation. But don't let AI build your statement. You build your statement, make it you. And now what I will say is if you want to throw it in AI for like a grammatic standpoint, like spelling, grammar, make it flow, okay, because something like Grammarly has always been around. And people have been using Grammarly for their master's and doctoral degrees since the beginning of time. Because as a healthcare administrator, I can tell you that's something I look at. And as senior nurses, they're going to look at, is your grammar on point as well? So, but yes, absolutely. Do not let it build your personal statement. That was a great point, George.
Yeah. And I had one more point on that. When I checked into Bahrain, I won't say too long, right? I had a saleable submitting for the EHO program. And in her package, in her package she had where she was sexually assaulted before, and she had it in there, very nicely written. She sent it to a captain over in one of her mentors, and the mentor tell her to take it out. And when she says, "Sir, I want you to read my statement." I say, "Hey, girl, that's your bread and butter. That's your testament right there. That's your life. Don't take that out. That's you, you know." And she went back and changed it. And little do you know, it came back and she was selected. But one of the other officers, her mentor, rewrited it and took that out. But when she showed it to me, I said, "Girl, that's your fire. That's your testament. That's your life. Put that back in there and send that package forward." Results came out. She was on that list.
I want to
Anything?
piggyback off that real quick as well. Just like Lieutenant George just said, realistically, this is your package. You're going to get all kind of feedback. So I would probably try to keep my mentors to a minimum because you're going to get all kind of information all over the place. But at the end of the day, remember, this is your package. You put what you want in your package because people will try to change your mind. Okay. All right. That's it now.
I'll just add something really quickly, so we can move to the next topic. So just to piggyback off of what both of you said, you can get advice to receive feedback on your statement, but remember it's your package. If they give you some advice, you don't have to apply it or don't feel like you have to just because it's coming from an officer or somebody who you got the advice from. If you don't feel like it's something you should change, then just keep it. And then as far as like the structure, a lot of statements that I've seen from past selectees as well before I submitted my package, it was kind of like what drove you to be a nurse, some leadership skills or opportunities you've had in the Navy that allowed you to showcase those fundamentals such as leadership positions. And then what you want to bring to the nurse corps. So what would you apply as a nurse corps if selected or when selected? I like to tell people to speak it into existence. So don't say if selected, put when selected. This is what I'll contribute to the nurse corps, Navy medicine, as well as training the corpsmen beside me as well.
Great point.
Money.
All right. I think we got personal statement beat up. We're gonna head to the next one for the sake of time. All right. Don't worry, Fergie, we're gonna get you in there. All
No
right.
worries, thanks. Okay.
All right, let's roll with CO's endorsement.
All right. CO's endorsement. Again. CO's endorsement. Again. Unless you have high visibility, the CO does not know you. The CO looks over thousands of people. They have a million meetings they go to. So when you get in your CO's endorsement, again, you're speaking about you, what you do, your collaterals, all the impact you have on the command. Okay? So you got to put work into it. So don't just go there and write some cheap stuff or basic stuff and send it to the commanding officer. When you send up your CO's endorsement, make sure there's evidence supporting your claims in there. You can't say that you're a BLS instructor and you don't have the BLS card, the BLS instructor cert in there. You can't say you're running so and so, but you gotta have evidence. So the CO. So like for example, like I know H.M. Macaulay a while back. He worked like, in the command suite in Pensacola. So the commanding officer sees him every day. So she know what he does, you know? So he could get away with that. But you not being in that position, you won't. So speak your truth, put all your documentations in there to support your claim and make sure it's well written. Make sure you have people go over it numerous times. Also, HT1 put in a good comment. You could take advice from people, but put what you feel is best that best resonates to you or speak of you or about you in that package. Anyone else could chime in? That's all I got for the CEO's endorsement.
I'll chime in really quickly. So from my experience with this, I pretty much drafted up what I wanted it to have in there, so that way I'm speaking to myself as a sailor and what I feel is like worthy of me putting out there in my package. For mine, I had a personal sit down with my CO. So some things that he asked me is why should I be chosen? Why do I want to do this? Why did I choose to go this route instead of staying the course to become an engineer officer? So those were just some things that I wanted to share just in case someone else has the same experience as me with their CO. He actually sat down and had a face-to-face with me. So I had the chance to explain to him what my passion was and why I chose to go the Navy medicine route instead of engineering. And then I was able to speak to the things listed in there. And then he just changed and edited what it was that he wanted as far as the grammatical things or words that he felt would be more appealing to the board when they viewed my package.
But the big thing here, you wrote it. You wrote it.
All right. Anybody else want to add before we go to the next slide? Easy day. Well, those are some great comments. And, to what Gutierrez said, just make sure you draft your own. There's, sometimes we'll have sailors that will send like a blank thing up and expect their CO to write it. Like that's not going to happen. You got to draft your own, but good stuff. Let's move to the next one.
Hey, and Hall just mentioned in the chat, Lieutenant Hall said another big point. Don't wait last minute throughout your CO's endorsement because the CO is a very busy person.
Yeah, we'll get to that when we get to the timeline and expectation slide. Great point, Lieutenant Hall. All right, let's talk about LORs.
Okay, so for letters of recommendation, some bullet points we have would be speak to character. This is not an eval, so don't write it as if it is an eval. Should be someone you have worked for. That senior, the better, but not a deal breaker, preferably in the specialty you are applying, and all officers can be utilized. So some recommendations I would give, I had a prior CO who knew me. I was on a small deck, so I was able to know my CO personally. So they were able to speak to things that I did at that command. They were able to witness some of the things that I did. So I drafted up my LOR, put in what I wanted it to say, and then I sent it off to that person who could speak to those things that were mentioned in my letter of recommendation because they actually witnessed it. I also had other officers, they wanted to see a printout of my last 5 evals as well as my ESR, just to kind of speak to me as a sailor. And if, they're putting their name on the line for us. So they want to make sure that if they're signing this off, recommending you for a program, that recommended someone who is actually going to uphold that standard. And then I will also recommend networking because, as stated before, I am not a corpsman, I'm an engineer. So networking was a really, really big thing for me. I'm very shy, so I had to put on my big girl pants and go out there and get it. So networking was a big deal. I didn't know any nurse corps officers at the time. So thankful I had a good mentor who gave me people to reach out to. And then I went out and did the legwork and I was able to get that LOR from an NC officer. And then again, I had to sit down and do like a face-to-face interview. So I did like a pre-board, just in case they asked me some questions on why I want to be a nurse, and why I wanted to join. And then that kind of determined if they would recommend me or not. And thankfully they did recommend, but I also drafted that up because that person didn't know me. And then I just gave the support and documentation to go with that as well. I would also say have someone proofread as well. So all of my LORs, before I sent them off to the officers, I had someone read over what I was typing to make sure if there was any grammatical errors or the way that it was formulated could be better. I took the advice that I wanted to apply and I applied it. And what I didn't, I left it out. And then I left it to the officer to change it to their liking. And then they forwarded it back to me. And then I just submitted it into my package.
All right, I'm going to chime in on letter of recommendation. She spoke about networking. It's really, really big. That's your biggest tool right there. So when I submit my package, it took me 8 years to get my package together. Every command I went to, I had somebody in my pocket. So as enlisted, we could have professional relationships with officers. And some people are scared to talk to officers. You can't keep in contact with your officer. You could have a professional relationship. What that officer could do for you when the time for your package to come, they could give you uh, a letter of mentorship. So I'm going to give an example. Mike, remember Captain Kenny from Pensacola? So Captain Kenny knew me as a junior company Pensacola. We kept in touch. I had a couple officers. There was like lieutenant commanders when I met them. But by the time I came for my package, they all was 06s. So we kept in touch, and I would give them updates of where I was in my package. So earlier, I knew I wanted to be a nurse. I would give them updates, and they would keep track. So when the time come, I send my stuff to them. They knew that I was tracking, I was on that track. So it was simpler because we had that relationship already. And then my letter was like pretty much a letter of mentorship, not just a letter of recommendation. It was a letter of mentorship that they've been tracking me for years on my path to become a nurse, which I feel speaks volumes to a board, because it's going to have that time period. Like they know me for like 8 years, and we've been keeping in contact. So that's all I gotta say.
I got a question for you all as the presenters, and this probably may have was gonna get brought up later, but I figured now is probably a good time. So for letter of recommendations for the nurse course specifically, um, whether I'm a corpsman or non-corpsman, do you recommend that I come over to the clinic or the hospital, or if you're a ship's nurse, down to medical and do some shadowing with the nurses?
Most definitely. Most definitely. And anybody could go through like the Red Cross in the hospital, go through them and get registered. And whenever you go through them, they can reach out to us. And you make network and you could shadow on any of the floors like Portsmouth or whatever that has the availability to shadow. But you gotta go through Red Cross first. So if you come to my unit, it speaks better to have someone higher in rank to give you a letter of recommendation. But if you come to my unit, I could proofread your letter and get my commander to send a letter for you on my DNS because I'm your witness saying that what you did. And I wrote it to my captain to send that letter to you for you, which will hold more weight on that board because I could testify that you was here putting in the hours and you saw it, to give you that little push on your package. Because the lieutenant versus the captain speaking, it's a way bigger pay grade. So, but that's what I could do for your other lieutenants can do for you.
Can I say something about the letter of recommendations?
Yeah, go ahead.
So hi everyone, my name is HM2 Fogarty. I was selected for academic year 2025. I think that one of the things that pushed my package over the edge, because I'd applied one time before and then wasn't selected, and then the next time I applied, I was. I think was because I had an admiral as one of my letter of recommendations. And when they say that you really need to be like advocating for yourself and like just letting people know like what your plans are. I had met his so the CMC for the Naval War College. We were at Starbucks, right? And all I did was just say, good morning, CMC. And then we'd started up a conversation. I'd let the CMC know, oh, I'm trying to apply for MECP, et cetera. And then he was like, oh, well, that officer right over there, that admiral right over there, he's actually president of the Naval War College. Do you want me to introduce you? And I was like, wow, yes, please, thank you. And then it went on from there. And then I got to have an interview with the admiral because I'd asked, like, would it be okay with you if I, asked for a letter of recommendation for my package? And he was like, yeah, absolutely. I want to be able to interview you first. I want you to send in your prospective package to me so I can read over it. And, like, I want to see like all the things that you've done, et cetera. And then I had my interview with him. I sent in my package that I was going to send in for that year. I sent in my prospective letter of recommendation, and then I was able to get one from him. So I think that that was really big for me. So just make sure that whenever you're going out, even just to Starbucks to get a coffee, make sure you're presentable. Make sure that, you're looking around and like seeing who's around you, and like advocate for yourself and like let people know what your plans are, because you never know where life might take you. So that's all I have to say.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, HM2. All right, let's go ahead and move to the next. We have appraisals.
Okay, so appraisals. Be confident, be humble, read about your interviewer and their history, have questions prepared, study your potential community and specialty, study strategic initiatives, look professional. The senior, the better, preferable in your community and specialty. For my appraisal boards, they were scheduled through Balboa Hospitals. So you're able to sign up for the days that you're available, and they already have the nurse corps officers aligned for you, and they'll provide the interviewers appraisal sheets. So I would highly shoot for you to have at least 90 to 95% of your package done by that time, so that way they can look at your package beforehand. It doesn't have to be 100% complete, but at least just a good bit of it completed, so that way they know who they're working with once you come in to do the board. I always tell people, make sure your uniform is squared away, military bearing, sandwich your answers when they're asking, to ensure that they know that you heard the question, you understand it, but also you're showing that military bearing when you're sandwiching your answers. If you don't know something, I like to tell people, keep in mind that these are humans as well. Don't let the rank intimidate you. So they're human just as well as we are. If there's a question that they may ask and you're not too sure because you're nervous, just say, I'm not sure, sir, ma'am. I'll get back to you at another time, or write down a question, or answer to the best of your ability if you are able to. Being confident and being humble. It's okay to be nervous. It's a board. Some people get stage fright when speaking in front of other people, especially high ranking officers. But just be confident in yourself. Speak to yourself. You are your advocate when you're in there, speaking to who you are, what you are. What are you trying to bring to the nurse corps? Why do you want to be a nurse corps? So before I went in for my appraisals, I did practice boards with some officers, and they kind of did practice questions with me from prior boards that people had. So it kind of helped me with the nervousness and being able to answer questions that were asked, because sometimes they'll ask you something that might kind of catch you off guard and you wasn't prepared for it, or them to ask you that question. So it kind of helps you pre-prepare just in case they ask you something that you aren't aware of. And then a tip that I was given by my mentor was to also write down questions for them as well. It's not just about them asking you questions, but you can also ask them questions as far as how their time in as a nurse corps officer is, what are recommendations that they can give to you to improve your package, since they had already looked at it briefly before the board had taken place. What else? And the most important thing they will ask is, why should you be a nurse? And they asked me about my strengths and weaknesses. So what was one strength that I could provide, and what was a weakness within myself that I noticed as a sailor or within the Navy. But also keep in mind, if your appraisals come back and it's not in your favor, I went out and set up another board for myself. So some of my appraisals didn't come back to what I felt that I represented as a sailor, and I felt that it wouldn't do my package justice. So again, I had to network, put my pride aside, and I went on the USS Mercy, and I spoke with the DNS there, and she set up an appraisal board for me. So thankful for her, I was able to get the appraisal scores that I wanted, and I was selected for MECP the past cycle.
Great
Good job.
Great point. And I was gonna say, I was gonna ask a question to you guys as presenters. So we know that the hospitals, they have the boards set up, and kudos to those that can make it to those boards. But for the sailors that are either, deployed or in remote locations, what are some things that you guys recommend for those sailors if they can't make it to like an actual MTF to do a board?
Sir, if I may, I me as a HM1 come into my command, I reach out to a lot of mentors, a lot of nurse corps officers, high ranking, even low rankings, just to ask for their package and advice. Some of them were deployed, they don't have access to nurse corps officers. So even a captain or a division officer or a department head can also give you a appraisal. So it does not have to be a nurse corps officer, but it's preferable. But I seen packages. Just make sure you add yourself to the Facebook Medical Enlisted Commissioning Program, because there are packages from prior selectees that have been selected. So make sure you do your homework as well and ask the right questions.
So HT1 brought up a point in regards to appraisals, right? Those are very important for the thing. And I had a sailor who had the same situation as her. So long story short, a couple of years ago there was an undesignated seaman undesignated seaman Brown got picked up for MECP. That was my protege. So she met me 2 months prior to her package, and we got it done. Long story short, she was at Portsmouth, and She was coming shadowing. She was undesignated on the carousage, and she was getting dealt around. She went to the psych floor, and one of the nurses that knew at MECP sent her to me. So she came to me and say, Simon Brown, I'll be honest with you. You've been in the Navy less than 1 year. It's gonna be tough. I'll be honest with you. I really don't see you, but if you're hungry and you want to do it, we're gonna do it. And she was hungry, and we did it. So she came to Portsmouth. They gave her a really bad appraisal. I say, guess what? We're gonna do this. I just came back from the comfort. I want to send you to the comfort. It's on the waterfront where your ship is. Go into the hangar bay and ask for so and so. She went in there. While she was telling her story, she didn't know the XO for the ship was in there. He was undesignated, and her story aligned with his story when he was undes, and he was the XO for the ship. So he got the commanding officer aligned, and they got it taken care of. She was on that list. Everybody was in the chat talking MSC. Oh my God, how come on Disney, whatever? 1 year the Navy picked it up, whatever. But that was her story. That was her luck. But you gotta network, and you gotta go there and put in that work, and she did. But long story short, she made it, man. She about to be commissioned soon.
I would just like to add one more thing. So one of my appraisals was actually done through like the telephone. So not all of them have to be in person. The officer that I was put in contact with from the force nurse at the waterfront, she wasn't here in San Diego. She was actually in Portsmouth. And we just scheduled a time that worked best for her. I sent her my evals and things that she wanted to go over just to ensure that she was advocating for someone who, you know, is up to the standard. And we had a teleconference and she asked me a few questions and then she emailed me my appraisal. So that's also another way if you're not able to be in person with the person that you're trying to schedule that appraisal for.
Awesome. Now you guys and girls gave some solid advice. That's the type of stuff that I wanted to hear was if I can't make it here, what else can I do? And that story that you just gave about that undesignated sailor, that is amazing. That is a testimony.
Yeah, man. There was chief. There was senior chiefs in there destroying that. Like, oh, whatever. I'm like, I just tell us, man, you thankful, keep your mouth shut. You made it, and you know your testimony, what you went through. Because every day that still would come from the ship and shadowing on my floor every day.
Awesome. All right, let's transition over to evaluations. Why are evaluations so important? I mean, I'm an enlisted